Hi, everybody. This is Michelle on the Catholic Family Podcast, and I am joined today by Ashley, and she's going to kind of give us her conversion story and just a little background on how she got where she is today. Without further ado, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Ashley?
Sure. We right now live in Minnesota. We have 9 children from ages 16 down to 7 months. We've kind of moved all over the place. I was born Southern Baptist, and now we're traditional Catholics. Um, and my
Yeah,
husband,
that's quite the journey.
yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about like how it was being a Southern Baptist? Is it like what you would assume, or was it different?
Um, well, I think everybody kind of has their own mindset on it. I was, born and raised in the Southern Baptist Church. My grandparents were heavy in my upbringing, and so they made sure I went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, um, and it's kind of we had youth group and we had church on Sundays mornings and Sunday nights, but it always felt like it was not where I was supposed to be. Um, so when, let's see, we were pregnant with our third child, and my husband had found his grandfather's dog tags, and on his grandfather's dog tags was a Saint Therese medal. And that medal made him start thinking, like, what is this? Because he was under the impression that his grandfather was not Catholic. Um, so that was all different to him. So he started researching the church, and I was like, no, that's not where I'm supposed to be. That's not how I was raised. So I started looking into it after he pushed a little more, and I decided to go to RCIA, which is in the Novus Ordo church's class that you would take before you joined the church. And I went to one class with him, and I started, reading about it and decided, this might be where our family should be. So we were in North Carolina at the time. My husband was in public safety for 18 years. And so our family was all in North Carolina. We were born and raised there. We started going to these classes. We joined the church at Easter time, and it was in 2011 we joined the church. It was Novus Ordo English Mass. And even during the RCIA classes, we did, have a couple of things that were kind of off to us. But to us, we thought, well, that's how the church is supposed to be. One of
Right.
those things, one of those things were birth control. The church they were telling us, that's old school. We don't do that here anymore. We just don't talk about that. And to us, that seemed kind of odd.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a big red flag. So I'm curious, when you were a Southern Baptist, was that even something that they believed? Like, did they have a
it
stance
was
on that, or was
it,
it
it was a hush hush. Nobody really
okay?
talked about it. It was the sort of thing that I have no idea what families did in our church. It wasn't talked about. All the families were kind of traditional 2 children families. We were very pro-life. I did a lot of college and high school projects on pro-life and abortion and stuff like that. So I know that that was big in our church, but birth control was never talked about. It
Okay,
just wasn't. I guess it was up to each family.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I would say that that would be a big red flag, especially if you have young kids and you're, looking to have a bigger family. Were there any other like big red flags that stuck out in the beginning?
In the beginning, not really. When we first started going to the classes at the Novus Ordo Church, nothing really stood out to us different until I started reading some books. One of those books was Born Fundamentalist, Born Again Catholic by David Curry. And he explained how the Mass was and the difference between a fundamentalist or a fundy compared to a Catholic. And he actually was a fundamentalist preacher that ended up becoming a Catholic. One of the things he mentioned in his book was, our Lord's Supper, which, is not what it's called in the Catholic Church, but the Lord's Supper we would, once a month, we would get this little tiny cup of grape juice and this little tiny cracker. And we would say, in memory of me, drink this wine. In memory of me, eat this bread. And then we would sit our cup down and we'd go about the rest of the church service, and then they'd go in the trash. And to me, in his book, he explained, you're throwing the memory of Jesus's blood in the trash, because
there's still
drops
drops, right? It's
So
sad to me to believe that people actually believe that, like there's no respect. Like it's just mind blowing to think that people actually might think that that's truly our Lord. It's hard to comprehend.
And that's just in the Southern Baptist Church, and there's a lot of modern Catholics now that don't believe in the transubstantiation portion of it. They just go to church and they take communion, dressed in whatever they want to be dressed in, pants or short skirts, and they didn't go to confession, or they don't go to confession. I know Catholics that have only been to confession maybe twice in their whole entire history of being Catholic. To me, that's hard to believe that
right?
You're going up there and you're taking the Lord with sin, and that's a good problem.
Yeah, definitely. No, and even, and you can see that with our modern, our Pope that we have, like he lets anyone receive communion. And it's like, really, like you're letting these like blatant sinners receive our Lord? Like it doesn't add up, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And that might be some of the, things we've come across when we've explained to our friends, the movement that we've made to traditional Catholicism, bringing them open. They're like, oh yeah, we want to come. And then we have to say, you can't take communion because you aren't, you don't believe the true church. You're following, a Pope that's not following traditional Catholicism. And that sometimes throws them off. Oh, I can't take communion? No. And then they just, don't show up. But, we kind of have to safeguard it.
Right.
Have to safeguard it, because that's what happened to the modern church, was they stopped safeguarding.
Exactly. And can't let everyone and their brother go to receive our Lord. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, right.
So when did you start thinking you might want to try something else or move on from that church?
Well, so we were not at the English Novus Ordo Mass for very long. We had our priest over for dinner one night. We had, let's see, our children were 6, 4, and maybe 1 at the time, our 3 oldest. He came over for dinner. He was wearing cut-off jean shorts and a tie-dye t-shirt. To us, we don't know any different. We didn't know there was anything else out there. We knew we wanted something a little more than what we were getting. And one of the stories he told us over dinner was that he met his ex-wife at Planned Parenthood when they were trying to decide what they were going to do with their unborn child that they just happened to conceive.
What?
And
oh my goodness. That's like stories you hear about that you don't think actually happened, but it happened.
You hear
like
about it and you think,
crazy,
oh, that's not true.
right?
That never happened. And a lot of modern Catholics see pictures of what the Pope is doing and they think, oh, that's not true. You're reading into, or it's lost in translation. That was one of the things that I used to say to my husband. He would say, did you see what the Pope said? And I would say, no, you're reading into it wrong. That was lost in translation. And it wasn't until we became traditional Catholic that I thought about that statement I made. That's what happened to the church, is the whole Catholic Church pre-Vatican got lost in translation, and now it's not the correct church. But anyway, so he came over to dinner, and wasn't long after that, a couple weeks maybe, we were in Mass, and in the middle of the Mass, a big projector screen came down from the ceiling, and they started telling us about how wonderful their school was, and right in the middle of Mass. And that's when me and my husband both looked at each other and we said, this isn't right. This isn't where we're supposed to be. So we actually got up and walked out, and we came across a Tridentine Mass that was about 30 minutes from our home. It was still the Novus Ordo church because to us, that's the only church we knew about. So we started driving there every Sunday for church, and the mass was at 1 o'clock. And, we met so many families. We homeschooled. There's so many families that were a lot like us. And that began our journey on the traditional lifestyle. So we were at that church, I'd say, for about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And the mass is pretty much the same as the pre-Vatican mass. It's the dialogue mass, so the servers aren't making they're not doing the responses. It's the congregation that's doing the responses.
Oh, so the congregation does the responses in Latin?
Yes, they do it in Latin.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And I'm not sure if the servers were doing it as well, or my son only served in Latin mass. He did serve in the English mass, in the English Novus Ordo mass. I'm sorry, the Novus Ordo Tridentine mass. He served there. He never served in an English mass, but I think one time, and he was so lost that he never did it again. So I'm not sure if they did the responses as well. But about 9 years in, my husband was in law enforcement and public safety for about 18 years. And that was about the time COVID was coming and the whole rioting and everything was happening. And we decided it's time for a change. It was coming into our home too much, and we did not want that for our children. So a friend of ours in Florida offered my husband a business job, working as a district manager. So I was like, sure. We lived in North Carolina at the time. This was 12 hours away, wasn't too far from family. So I just started looking up Latin masses and homeschool groups. And I found a church in Brooksville, Florida that had both. So we said, this is perfect. So we moved. We were about 25 minutes from Brooksville, where we lived, and we went there. The mass was a little different than the Tridentine mass that we were used to. The church was more of a Novus Ordo church than what we were used to. It was a newer church. It was like built in the 70s, so it looked like a spaceship.
Yuck.
The church we came from was built in 1953, so it was the older traditional style church. But this one was it wasn't pretty. But the priest there was very conservative. He loved the Tridentine mass, and he did a very good job of trying to keep that in his church. And at one point, because this was during COVID, and they were having to record masses. This was also at the time when the Pope was doing the motu proprio, where he was saying, we're going to stop doing traditional Latin masses at the Novus Ordo Church. He actually one Sunday cut the camera off and did his sermon and said, we will not stop doing this mass. I have a place that we can go do this mass. If he tries to tell us we can't do it, we're going to go there.
Wow.
So he cut the camera off, so it wasn't out there. But still, at this time, we still felt like, okay, this just doesn't seem right. This person that is supposed to be, in charge of our church and infallible in a lot that he's saying, is saying things that go totally against what Jesus started in the Catholic Church.
Right. No, it's interesting. I've heard a lot of people who have come over from the Novus Ordo around 2020, and they didn't like all the shutdowns, like all, the church is all shut down, and priests, I should say, were like on vacation, and they were bragging about like, oh, we don't have to work and we're on vacation. I'm like, man, our priests out here were working double time. They were doing extra masses and fitting people in wherever they could. And it was like harder for them, I'm sure. But yeah, I've heard of a lot of people who kind of made that wake up call around 2020. So just kind of interesting,
Yeah, the doors never shut at the traditional churches.
Mm-hmm.
The church in Florida that, we came across, which I'll get to in a second, they actually put a sign on their door that said, we're closed, we're not allowed to be open. The congregation ripped that sign off, and
nice.
because they knew mass is going on no matter what. The
right.
priests are having mass, and that was the only thing that was said about it. And after that, the church was open, never closed.
Wow.
And I'm not sure about the churches around here. I don't think that they closed either, but it was a big movement for a lot of so-called Catholics that thought this is where I'm supposed to be, realized that they were awakened. There's more out there.
Mm-hmm. A kind of a blessing in disguise, like who would have thought that, out of 2020 there would be so much good, but I think there really was. It opened a lot of eyes and people came to the traditional church, and yeah, I think there was a lot of good that came from it.
Silver lining behind everything.
Right.
So at this point in time, we were in Florida, and my husband was driving home from one of his stores that was in Tampa, which was about an hour south of where we were living. And there was a wreck on the interstate. So he was detoured down a side road. And he's driving down this road, and he comes across this beautiful convent, this gorgeous church, and he thinks, it's got to be Greek. It looks Greek. It's got to be Greek Orthodox. So he came home and he told me about it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's neat. So he looked up the name, and it's a traditional Latin church, seminary, and convent. And we're thinking, well, if that's the case, why didn't that come up in our search engine when we were searching for churches? So we brought it up to a couple friends. Our teenagers they had friends in their homeschool co-op, and they were like, I think I know who goes to that church. And they asked their friends, and they were like, yeah, we go there. And I asked one of my friends, and she said, her comment was, oh, that's not a real church. You can't go there. That's not real. And so that made me think, oh, well, what is it?
Right? Like, why?
Yeah. So we started talking to some of our other friends that we found out had went to this church, and we started researching night and day. I think me and my husband stayed up all night one night just watching sermons on YouTube from Bishop Sanborn, this was Bishop Sanborn's church, Most Holy Trinity. At the time, it was Most Holy Trinity Seminary, but he's since then moved up north, to somewhere else. But the church is still there. So Novus Ordo Watch was one of our major, brought us into the church. There's a button on there that says start here, and we clicked that button, and the rest,
never look back. Right? That's amazing.
We found out so much information from Novus Ordo Watch, and we read a lot of Father Cicada's books. I have his 3-volume set of all of his writings in books. We got those, and we read all those. And Bishop Sanborn had a sermon on the traditional family. And we said, this feels like us. Like, this is where this is what we've been trying to do. We didn't really have TV in our home already. We dress modestly. The things that the Catholic Church now look down upon, sort of. They're like, oh, that's old. We don't do that anymore. That was us. So we went, my husband and I went to one of the masses one morning, Sunday morning, and we left our children at home because we said, what if this isn't right? We don't want to drag our children in, realize this isn't it, and they not understand. So we went by ourselves, and Bishop Sanborn actually happened to be there that day. So we sat down after Mass and talked to him, and it was amazing, just the things that he was telling us about the church. We said, this is where we want to be.
Wow. So you knew like that quickly that was the right thing.
It was pretty much after his sermon that it might not be a sermon. It might actually be a training class, or, one of his teachings, his class teachings, because it was pretty long. I want to say it was about 45 minutes to an hour long. But after we watched that video, we said, this is what we need to do. And, that's where we went. And
that's amazing. And just to backtrack a little bit, the fact that your husband found it because of a detour, because of an accident. I mean, talk about divine providence. That's amazing. Well, and to backtrack further, the fact that you found, his grandpa's dog tags, and then it had a medal of Saint Teresa. I mean, what are the odds that would have happened and that it would have led you to the Novus Ordo, and then later on led you to the true church? Like that stuff doesn't just happen. That's God, that's God's hand.
It is. I kind of wish, well, I can't say I wish because, God does it in his own timing, but she would have got us there a little faster.
Right. That's true.
Our teenagers, they were pretty, they were, they were teenagers by the time we made the move, and they had a lot of, oh, is this correct or is this correct? I wish our little kids aren't going to have that. They're only going to know of one thing. They're not going to have to relearn, the St. Michael, even the St. Michael prayer is a tiny bit different, just words in it. And sometimes we'll say it and we'll be like, oh, that's not how we're supposed to say it. Our kids actually correct us because they're in school now.
Oh, nice.
At our church. So they correct us a lot on some of our prayers that we've known. And so I had a little trouble going from Southern Baptist to Catholicism because it's different. We don't believe by faith alone is not a thing in the Catholic Church. And so I had a lot of relearning to do. Now we're having a lot of relearning again
from the Novus Ordo, right?
A little bit, not as major. But I am thankful for my Southern Baptist upbringing because I know my Bible stories very well. I know the Bible. I don't know the parts of the Bible that the Protestants took out of our Bible. I don't know those because I didn't have them, but it's something that I feel like is lost sometimes in the Catholic Church, especially the Novus Ordo Church, that they don't look at the Bible stories as much, which I think are really important.
Yeah, I would agree. So I'm curious, when you were a Southern Baptist, do they do only Old Testament study, or is it Old and New Testament?
Old and New Testament.
Okay, so that's kind of, I've always just assumed it was like more Old Testament, but yeah, no, that's great. I think it's really important to know your Bible. And honestly, I didn't read the Bible until I started homeschooling. And then I was like, it started coming up and I was like, this is something we should do as like a study. And so now we're reading the Bible, but it's not something I've ever done, as an adult yeah, I think it is good to know. And obviously it's the word of God, so that's really cool that you had that even before you were Catholic.
And that might be one of the arguments that the Protestants have with us is, well, the Catholics don't read their Bible. Well, that's not true because we read the Bible in Mass every single day.
Right, exactly. The epistles and gospels are straight from the Bible, so that is a really good point.
So we met with Bishop Sanborn and he wanted us to take some catechism classes just to make sure we understood the traditional faith. This was I want to say it was November. It was after Thanksgiving. And we started Zoom meetings with Father Patrizzi, who is one of the priests at Bishop Sanborn's church. And he's also one of the teachers for the seminarians. And he did a very, very good job with me and my husband. It was fast because we wanted to try to get through it pretty fast. And so we started those classes with him. When we finished our classes, our children started classes with one of the other priests at the church. Fortunately, I cannot remember his name, but I'm sorry.
You're good.
They started the classes with him, and he was very strict. Every day he'd make them recite, the Nicene Creed and all the different prayers that they needed to know. And we'd have to study them all week, all the way down to our 5-year-old had to know these prayers. And so this went on so that was November, all the way up until June 18th. So we did not, unfortunately, we missed Christmas Mass and we missed Easter and all these Masses. We were there. We took spiritual communion, but we did not get to actually partake in communion during that time, just to make sure. And that was hard. That was very hard. And I can see and understand why a lot of people, when we say, come try it out, are scared to come because they don't want to miss out on communion. Well, in all actuality, they haven't had communion.
Right.
They haven't had it at all. It's not the real thing. But we were very thankful that Bishop put us through this because it made our faith so much stronger, and it helped us realize how important the body and blood of Jesus Christ is to us.
Right. Well, and I'm sure, like you said, it would make you appreciate it so much more, having to wait and learn all that you need to know. I mean, once you do get to receive, it's so much more special, I would imagine.
It was amazing. It was actually on our now 2-year-old's first birthday. That was the day they planned for us to have our conditional abjurations and our conditional baptisms, and we had our first confessions all over again and first communion, and we did it all conditionally. And it was so special because it was just our family in there and the priests and some of the seminarians, and it felt right, And
Wow.
this was with Father Fleece. This was before Father Fleece became Bishop Fleece. So
Oh,
we
okay.
actually did our baptisms and our confessions and our abjurations.
Wow, that's amazing. So that was recently then. Did you say it like a year ago, or is that
It
right?
was, yes, about 1.5 years ago
Okay,
that we
wow.
actually joined the traditional church. So
Wow.
yes, it's when we became Catholic.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, and talk about an amazing restart, just to have all of that done on the same day and then have a fresh start for you and your kids. Like what a special thing.
Right. And we were 45 minutes from the church at this point, and we didn't live close enough for our children to actually go to the school there, but they did a little stint of it, the online school with Queen of All Saints. They did a little stint. They started in August, and in October, my husband's boss said, "Hey, I have a job for you. Do you want to move to Minnesota?" And we were like, "What?" We just got into this church. We made so many friends. There's a family that lives across the street from the church that just took us in like family. The first day we walked in, they handed my husband a coffee mug, and it had the Citadel on it. And that's where my husband went to school. And he's like, "What do you know about this?" And and the guy said, "I went to school there." And it was like meant to be friendship right
Oh,
away.
wow.
They
That's
realized
neat.
it's a very small school, it's a military college, it's very small, and they both went there. And so they took us in like family, and they helped us realize what this journey was all about. And they mean a lot to us. And we actually had to do our conditional confirmations all over again as well, but we did that up here in Minnesota, and they were our sponsors for that.
Oh, that's so neat. So they came from Florida to,
Yes, they did.
oh,
So
wow. That's amazing.
Alton did. He came up for Seth, but his wife could not come because they have younger children. So I had someone stand in for me, but she was able to come up a couple months later for a wedding. So I did get to see her. It was just not at the exact time of confirmation, but she was my sponsor. She helped. She really made a big impact on getting us to where we were.
Wow, that's amazing.
So about that time, my husband's boss offered him this job, and he said, you know, I know there's a traditional church up this area. I've looked it up. So he knew what he was doing when he offered this. So he flew me and my husband up to Minnesota. And before we came, we looked up St. Cloud and the area because we knew that there was a traditional church there. And so we came to visit. We drove around the church a couple times because we were scared to like stop and ring the doorbell. And there was the kids at the school were outside playing, and we thought, well, they might think, we're crazy if we just stop. So finally we just stopped. We rang the doorbell. My sister Anne-Marie came to the door, and she looked at us kind of funny, like, what are you doing here? And we're like, we just want to meet with you guys and, find out about the church and the school. And it was like we had known each other forever.
Oh,
Sister
that's
Anne-Marie came up, Sister Philomena, Father Molina came up, and Sister Lucia was there at the time, and she came up, and we just started chatting, and we stood there, I think, and talked for 3.5 hours.
oh, wow. That's
School.
awesome.
And we were kind of concerned. We weren't sure, hey, are these churches together? Is Bishop Sanborn and Bishop Pipperin's churches, do they, can we go to either one? And they're like, yes, that's not a problem, because I think there's some miscommunication there between the two, that some people think poorly of the other and whatnot, but it's not, because we've been on both sides, and neither of them talk bad about the other.
Right.
I think they think that the other does, but really, all actuality, they're all in it together.
That's so good to hear, because I have heard of like, little differences or kind of little, maybe like you could say arguments, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we're all on the same page, and, we're all state of the contest Catholics, and that's really good to hear that you saw it from both sides and found they were both friendly.
I just think it's a no pope thing that, there's no one there to say, look, this is what it's supposed to be. And that might be where some of the confusion comes in.
Right.
The bishops have a whole lot to worry about.
Right.
All they're both doing is trying to get us to heaven. The miscommunications and the differences are just small things in the big picture.
So true. Yeah.
So we met with them. We got a tour of the school. I said, how many children are here in the school? And she said, there's 18. I was like, what? I was thinking, there was like 18 in each class. I didn't realize there was a such thing as a small school, because we've always mostly homeschooled. We did try a stint of Novus Ordo Catholic school, and it was never right for our family, ever. It just, a lot of Harry Potter readings and movies played in school, and stuff that just wasn't for our family.
So did you homeschool pretty much the whole time up until Minnesota? Okay.
We did about 2 years at 2 different times in Novus Ordo school. And we ended up pulling out halfway through the year and said, we're done. That was when we pulled them out. 2 weeks later, my husband got the job in Florida.
Oh, so wow.
It just all like worked together. So we've homeschooled, we've been to Novus Ordo school, we've been to a traditional school, and we realized, I'm not the best homeschooler.
I don't think anybody is. I mean, it's hard.
A lot of kids. And I want to say that I'm amazing at it, but I'm not.
Well, I hear you. I'm not either. So it's hard. But I always think like it's so much better than public school. Like, I mean, just keeping your kids home and reading to them is so much better than a public school education. So I'm like, that makes me feel
you're better off just not educating your children.
Exactly. Right.
It's just the things that they're around and the things they see. And, my husband had a small stint in public school as an SRO, a school resource officer, and it was in a middle school. And he realized that's the worst years in a child's life as far as peer pressure and molding the child into what they are. And if anything, the middle school years are the worst.
I could see that. They're so formative. I mean, that's when you discover like who you want to be and who you are and where you fit in. And I mean, you don't want to have a bunch of bad examples around your kids at that age, because if you have some kids make it and it's great, but like I wouldn't want to risk that, because yeah, it's scary. It's a scary world. And
that's one of the advantages of us coming up here to Minnesota, was we had to start all over in our friendship circle, and our bubble is traditional Catholics. We don't know anybody else.
Right.
We haven't had need to meet other people outside of our bubble, and just to have those kids in our family, and to have our kids have friends outside of the house that are also believing the same thing that we are and trying to raise their children the same way we are, is amazing.
No, that's huge. I mean, having good friends, that is such a big difference.
Yes, it's very important. And the small school atmosphere of it is like I'm homeschooling, but the sisters are doing all the work for me.
Right. Best of both worlds.
Right. They're getting the education, but the high school here has 4 students. 2 of them are my kids. So it's almost like they're homeschooled. It's just smaller. It's really perfect for our kids. And most of my kids have, well, last year they did, this year's a little different, but most of them have another sibling of theirs in their class with them, because the grades go, like from kindergarten through 3rd grade, and 4th grade through 5th grade, and 6th through 8th, and 9th through 12th. So the way they're set up, they have a sibling in their class.
Oh, that's so nice.
So they're still having that family time, I guess, at school, since they're not homeschooled, but they're getting the education. My children have flourished in their faith so much since we moved to Minnesota that it's unreal. We have, multiple children in our family discerning their vocations. Which
Wow.
I don't think would have ever happened if we lived anywhere else. It definitely wouldn't have happened if we were in the Novus Ordo church.
Right. That's
It's not.
amazing. No, the priests and sisters, they do so much and they are such a blessing. I mean, I was blessed to have gone to Omaha. Like I went to the school in Omaha, Mater Dei, and I made so many good friends and I was around the sisters every single day. We had daily mass and I just think that it helped me grow so much as a person. But I mean, like you said, for your kids, like what an opportunity, just to have, yeah, those solid friendships and not to have the peer pressure. I mean, that is something great.
It's very important. This just having, like you said, having the sisters there with my children every day, and the priest teaching the classes, and having the priest over for dinner, and having the sisters every now and then. My children realize that they're a part of our life.
Right.
Before, my older kids, they knew what a sister was when they were younger, but we were in Washington D.C. once and we saw a sister. We're like, oh, look, it's a nun.
Mm-hmm.
We went up to her and got a picture with her,
right.
because we've never seen a nun before.
Right.
And now they're in my kids' life every day. They are teaching my children their faith. They're teaching my children the important things in life. The priests are teaching religion classes and teaching science classes. And, they get out there and they play kickball with the kids and they play soccer. And they're just so immersed in our kids' life that we didn't have that before.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, and it was similar with me growing up because we went to a traditional Catholic church my whole life. I was a cradle Catholic, but we didn't have sisters. We didn't really have like a school. So yeah, I didn't know what sisters were like. And now like my little girls, it's just as natural for them to want to be a sister than it is for them to want to be a mom. And it's just like they're normal people and they're around them all the time. And I actually have two sisters who are sisters. So it's just really neat to see that like they want to be like the sisters and they see them all the time. And I think that's really special because I just imagine what it would have been like, back in the day when mostly all the churches were Catholic and there was a Catholic church in every town. And that's how life would have been, like surrounded by religious and it's cool that we have that, in our little bubble of Catholic community.
Yes, it is. My 4-year-old daughter, Therese, she loves to dress up as a sister just as much as she loves to dress up as a princess.
Right.
To her, and my oldest daughter, she didn't know how to dress up as a sister.
Right.
My 5-year-old the other day, his daddy asked him to go grab his coffee cup from his office, and he brought it up to him, and he goes, "Mia cuppa, mia maximum cuppa." And
that's so cute. Learning Latin already. That's so cute.
In mass, they are listening.
Right.
You might not have understood the words correctly, but
right. They're little sponges. That's so cute.
You heard it. So my husband's like, I got to get a coffee mug now with that.
Right. That's brilliant. I would buy one if he makes them and sells them. That's great. No, it's funny. My little girls, they play choir and they'll have all their stuffed animals lined up and they'll like all be like singing in choir and they'll have their babies sometimes in the cry room and it's sweet. I love seeing them play like that because I'm like, this is the important stuff and it's just cool to see that when your kids.
We do a lot of building chapels with blocks here, and we have a lot of saint peg dolls, and they'll build the chapel and they'll put the saints on it and they'll put saints at the top that are the choir. Not my oldest son, but my 12-year-old son, he likes to build with Legos, and he has a full chapel with the mass set up, and he even cut out and drew vestments for each of the Legos for the priests. And it's so, and he'll tear it down, and I'm sitting there like, what are you doing? He'll tear it down and rebuild it bigger. And
that's so sweet.
That just, you don't see that in the modern church.
Right. There's not that love in that.
Lost.
Yeah.
and I don't know that they'll ever get it back. And that hurts my heart.
No, it's so true. Well, and it's life, like living as a Catholic, it's so much ingrained and part of your identity, and it's like to give that to your kids is just so special to have that, like, as their identity being a Catholic. It's really special. So you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying you got to live it outside of church, not just
exactly.
in church.
Yep.
That's where it's at.
Yep. So you mentioned before that you have started like a little preschool and or kind of like a couple times a week you have your younger kids.
So last year our church had, like, after mass on Wednesdays, they got together and just did a little craft or something with the preschoolers, just to get them together. And this year I thought, back to that I'm not a good homeschooler thing. I mean well, and I want to teach my little kids preschool, but you wake up in the morning and there's dishes to be done and there's a house to clean, there's clothes to wash, and you say, okay, I'm going to get to it later. Well, later never happens. So I said, I got to hold myself accountable. So we set it up. It's just 2 days a week for 2 hours. It's a come and go as you please type thing. So I put out on Sunday nights, I'll say, this week, this is the letter we're learning. Let me know who's coming. And if they want to come, they'll say, my child's coming. If they can't come, they just won't come. And so you don't have to sign up for it for the whole year. You just come and go when you can. And we started that in September. And what I thought was going to be maybe 4 children, 3 of them being mine, ended up being at least 10 to 12 each day.
Wow.
And different people come on the Mondays and different people come on Thursdays and vice versa. But it apparently is a big hit.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I've set it up we start with our prayers and our hello song, and we do calendar time, and they learn the days of the week and the months of the year. And then we do a craft. I usually it's a letter of the week. So we'll do a craft. This week we're on letter G, and they're learning about goldfish and gumballs. And Thursday they're going to make a little stained glass grotto and learn about St. Gertrude and St. Genevieve and just different saints that start with G.
Oh.
So it's actually worked out. We're getting ready to learn some Christmas songs so that we can be a part of the school Christmas program.
Oh, so fun.
They think they're big kids.
Oh, that's so fun.
They came home that day and told my children came home and told their older siblings, we're going to be in the Christmas program and we're going to sing songs.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it. I want to send my kids. I wish we were closer because I would totally
go. Virtual.
Right. Because I'm similar. I do, like, my older kids, we do homeschool, but man, preschool is just kind of like really hit and miss. So
you mean well, you do, but
yep.
it never happens.
Yep,
and
exactly.
Every day they'll say, can we do school today? And I'll say, not today, we're going on Monday, or we're going on Thursday. And
right.
So it's saying in a little bit, it's changed to on Monday or Thursday. And so they get to school and they're happy and they get to be with their friends.
And that's the perfect amount for that age. I mean, like 2 days a week and 2 hours. I mean, that's the extent of their attention span. So that's perfect.
We can paint and do all that fun stuff that I don't want in my house at
yes,
church.
I love that. I love it. So, and then you were mentioning the other thing, you started the Tarcissians group up in Minnesota. Is that right? Or with help?
Yes, I'm helping Sister and Father Melina with the Tarcissians of the Sacred Heart. We have, I want to say, about 35 children that joined.
Wow.
That enrolled the first week we started. So that was a big outcome. We didn't expect that many. So usually we do it on the first Friday. So they're all earning their 9 First Fridays. I think we're on the 4th one or 3rd one. I'm not sure which one, but it usually starts with a little talk that Father Molina gives, and he does such a good job with the kids. They all love him to death. And so
we do too. He's the best. And Sister Philomena and Sister Anne Marie, your whole group out there is just awesome.
That's why we can't move away, even though our families are, and that's really hard. We cannot leave them. They just make big impact on us. So we start with a little talk, and then they go into the chapel for prayer time, and then they might do a craft or a game. They all got little badges that they wear that has their name on it, and they're Tarcissians because they enrolled, and they get to wear that to church every Sunday if they want. They wear it on their first Friday, and it just kind of shows, I'm doing what I can to teach others about Jesus and teach them about the Sacred Heart and be missionaries for Jesus. And that, I think, means a lot to them. They've each got little cross necklaces. They've gotten enrolled in the miraculous medal. They each got a little miraculous medal. And we did a craft, and we made a big miraculous medal they could hang in their room. And so it's going very well. I'm
Wow,
very
that's so
impressed.
good to hear. That's so good to hear. Yeah, that's inspiring. I really want to start. I still haven't gotten the details and that going with our parish. But yeah, it's a great thing. I think it's a really beautiful thing to help kids and really bring the faith to life, and
You can do it in your home,
right.
homeschooling. And we actually have the Mission Church in Canada is actually a part of our group, our Tarcissians the Sacred Heart. And there's also Father Heine has, I don't know if it's his nieces and nephews, maybe. They are doing it over in Europe as well. They're part of our mission of the Sacred Hearts, and they got their badges, and we mailed them to them, and that sort of thing. So you could always join ours until you
Right.
get
Yeah.
started.
No, that's yeah, it's awesome. I think it's such a good thing. So is there any advice that you would give for moms or for even for people who are like, coming over from the Novus Ordo or anything like that you've learned on your journey or anything?
Yes, I would say just go with your gut and do it. Just don't hold back. We did a lot of research when we were looking. We're like, well, maybe we should look at the SSPX because it's there and it's sort of still a part of that modern church. And we said, no, that's still not right. We're still just making baby steps, and we're not just making the move. Watch and read Novus Ordo watch the Catholic Family Podcast. All just set up a notification to just tell you whenever there's a new one on there, and watch them. Watch all the sermons that are posted. There's such good information in those sermons that will help you on that move and make you realize that this is what God wants. He didn't want the church to change. If he did, he would have made it that way from the beginning. There was nothing wrong with it, and there was bad people that were in there, that infiltrated, and just like the devil did it. And just come over to what is one true Catholic Apostolic Church. Just come on over. Just do it.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, those are great words of advice. But well, it's been amazing having you on, Ashley. I think your story is so inspiring. And yeah, all you're doing is great. And yeah, I think it's really hard, like being a mom and being, a homeschooler, or like even, not being out, like either way, what you're doing is hard. So it's awesome to have like-minded moms who are all in it together, and we're all striving for our kids and striving, to help each other get to heaven. I think that's really, really special.
We have to create our bubbles, and we have to stay in those bubbles and keep our kids. Our one job on earth is to get our kids' souls to heaven.
Yes.
And we have to keep that bubble because that's what's important. That's what matters.
Yes, exactly. No, you've said it well. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'll hopefully have you on again, or yeah, we'll keep in touch, and it's been great. All right.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
yeah, thank you. We'll
Bye.
see you later. Bye.